In the webinar that you are about to watch, myself and Dave Betcher from the Betcher Consulting Group talk all about sales. What's not working in sales? What are our expectations? Are they matching up with the reality of what salespeople can do? Is it working for our teams? Well, we know that only about half of salespeople are actually hitting quota on an annual basis. So that shows me that maybe it's not, and maybe we can do it better. Well, we talk through some of our strategies in this webinar. Take a look. Well, hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I am so excited that you are here. As you can see, we've already got, a special face that some of you might recognize from a few months ago, who I will intro in just a little bit. But if you don't recognize him, that's okay. If you've been to these in the past, Dave has been a really fun new guest at the beginning of this year. So welcome, everybody. We'll let everybody get settled here. I'm actually going to go ahead and double check. I'm going to pop open my chat and make sure that I have all the settings correct so that we can chat with everybody. But if you're in here and this is your first time, one of the things that we care about deeply is that we want everybody to feel like they are part of the conversation. Hence why we've been calling this series The Conversation Continues. We want to make sure that you all have a say in this, because I think it's really important that you have your boots on the ground. You're learning this stuff as you go as well. So while we want to bring a lot of expertise and a lot of value to this, we want to hear from you. So if you want to jump in the chat, pop that open in Zoom right now, and just start throwing in. You can throw in where you're joining us from. It's always a fun way to just kind of get to know. I was also thinking about it last night. What's something that would be fun to hear from people as well? If you want to jump in and put what is one word or a short sentence that sort of defines your year so far? The first 2.5 months? Is that right? Yeah. I can do math, right? So jump in chat, throw some of that stuff in. Don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you all and make sure that we're having a really good conversation with everybody. So would love to hear kind of what defines your year so far, where you're joining us from. The other thing that we also have here in Zoom that I think is amazing, and we want to make sure that we're utilizing, is we want to make sure that we are using the QA as well. So QA is really good if you've got a question or something like that you don't want us to miss. Chat can get going a little crazy as we get a lot of people into these webinars. So feel free to use QA. In fact, David already jumped into QA. He's coming in from Edmonton, Alberta. Dave?
Fellow Canadian. How great is that?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Oilers. We can always throw that out. Good win last night, fellas. Yep.
Hey, that's a big one. I don't want to talk too much hockey. I mean, the Colorado Avalanche
are
pretty good right now. I'm just saying.
I hear you.
We got a solid team, but
I hear you.
Without further ado, let's jump into this. I do go to webinars sometimes and they sit and talk about themselves for 20 minutes. I don't want to do that. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this, because we got a lot to cover today as well. But before we do that, I do want to introduce Dave Betcher. The wonderful Dave Betcher is here from the Betcher Consulting Group. Dave, would you please give us just a quick intro for those of us that have never met you before? Let them know kind of what you do, a little bit about your history, so they know what you're bringing to the conversation today.
100%. So, Kevin, my name is Dave. I'm up here in lovely, rainy Vancouver, Canada. We're getting the rain from Hawaii. It's coming over our way. We've had about 4 days here. So I'm trying to stay dry and warm in my place. I have about 25 years in the CRM space. I founded a CRM platform that I exited about 7 years ago, and it seems like a long time. And I am a consultant now, and I work with companies on their CRM space. So typically I work with the sales teams, the marketing teams. I work a lot with sales enablement, and I make sure that people have the right tools at the right time, and we're not putting too much pressure on our salespeople and giving them all the right tools and abilities so they can do what they do best, which is sell.
Well, I love that. And that's going to come in so handy with the things that we're talking about today, because what we are covering today is we were talking about kind of this idea between the reality versus reasonable. What are some of the things that are working in sales environments these days? What are some things that are not working? And what are those? What are those differences? What are those breaks? How do we sort of bring that together? So Dave, what you just mentioned about the tool space, the technology space, that's going to be something we're going to cover today. So really excited to do that. Of course, we're going to bring video into the conversation because that's what we do here at BombBomb. So we're going to do that. But let's jump in with kind of the high level agenda here of what we want to do and how we want to cover this. So obviously reality versus reasonable, of going, what are our expectations? What's broken? How do we sort of bring this together to make sure that we are helping not only our team succeed, but those of you that are kind of solopreneurs who are running your own business, whether you're in real estate, mortgage, insurance, it doesn't matter. You're wearing a lot of hats. How do we sort of do this for ourselves internally as well? I don't want you to think this is all sales leader to sales team. Yeah, if you're in a corporate environment, this absolutely fits. But those of you who are also just doing your own thing, this is going to be really impactful for you and how you start to think about this as well. And a huge part of that is kind of this expectation gaps. What is the break here? So we're going to set the a really nice groundwork of our understanding. So we're talking about the same things, and then I kind of revamped the format a little bit here. We're going to start to basically define problem, solution. So we're not doing a whole bunch on the problem. We're going to kind of work our way through this and see how we feel about that. And then we're going to talk about the role of technology and kind of a practical playbook in this. So those of you that are familiar with Zoom, I have already uploaded a one-sheeter into this that you can download out of Zoom. We will send that in the follow-up content as well. But we're putting a little bit of a playbook together that can help you guys understand how do we bridge this gap, and it's something that you can use. So our goal here is, of course, give you information, but also give you practical tools that you can take away from this as well. So, Malik, so glad you're here from the nonprofit sector. I mean, man, you guys have so many unique challenges of running a business and also, having to work in some different ways. So really, really glad that you're here. Cynthia, really glad you're here. And we can talk a little bit more if you want to write down some questions and things for maybe the end of the webinar that are specific to one of the things you're struggling with. We'll definitely jump on that as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump a little bit here into really, again, setting that ground layer. As I was starting to think about this topic and was starting to look about what really is the gap, I think a lot of us can agree. Yeah, it feels like there is a struggle. We talked early in the year, Dave, you were here for that one, about the sales funnel, how the traditional sales funnel is just not working the way it used to. That's part of the gap, is those expectations. But I started looking even deeper about, okay, what do salespeople think? What are some metrics? What's some data to show that this really is true and it's not just Kevin feeling a certain way or us having feelings? And all of these numbers started to come up. And one of the things I really started to look at is, what is the success of salespeople in general? Now, I will say this is probably more of a generic sales role, less of that kind of solopreneur thing when they're using this data, just to give a little bit of context on that. But I think it's really interesting for us to look at this and start to kind of ask. 30% is the annual turnover rate of the average sales team. Okay. To give comparison, the average turnover rate for any other department is 13%. So right there, we've got twice as much average turnover on a sales team. I was on a sales team for several years, and I think one of the things that was always alarming to me when I jumped into that was this, oh my gosh, you jump in, you meet all these people, we're doing all this training, and all of a sudden you show up back from lunch one day and someone's gone. And you get pulled into an office and it's, hey, James is no longer with us. We wish him the best. Just wasn't working out. It just felt very jarring to me, right? But this is really common. 43% of sellers are reporting that they're struggling with mental health due to quotas and financial stress as some of the top causes. Now, what I think is interesting about this is when you look at surveys, if 43% are telling us that, what's the actual number, right? There's some people that are not eagerly going, oh yeah, I'm struggling with my mental health. So it's probably even a little higher than that, just thinking about human nature. But the number that I think that stands out to me as well is that 54%. If only 54% of our people are hitting or above quota on an annual basis, is this system working? The only other thing I can think of, speaking of sports, Dave, I don't know if you're a baseball guy at all, but that's the only thing I can think of that has a lower bar than this. You're a really good hitter in baseball if you're hitting 3 out of 10, right? If you're hitting 300 in baseball, you're amazing.
Yeah.
I don't feel okay the fact that we're setting up a system that only half of our people can succeed in.
Yeah.
That feels like a problem. And not only that, but it's causing mental health. It's causing greater distress in that sense. So I don't know. I mean, looking at these, Dave, what stands out to you as sort of alarming in this, or what triggers you from seeing some of these numbers?
Well, the 30% is really the key one. And if you think of the cost involved with
Mm,
onboarding new sales team members, and um, not just the cost of onboarding that one team member, but there's always a cost with our existing team that are kind of in charge of, the training and the product knowledge and everything that goes along with that. And when we lose somebody, just the overall costs, the reassignment of, leads to other prospects or to other salespeople who don't necessarily understand where people are within their sales cycles. It's it's mind jarring, and it is so disabling for an organization to have that level of turnover, and it happens so often. My primary vertical is in home building, mostly
okay.
on the builder's side, and I just see the amount of turnover that happens, and it's in many cases due to the last two elements on here, Kevin. The amount of pressure and strain and expectation that we put on our salespeople, not just to sell homes, but to update their CRM, to have a sales funnel,
Mm.
right? And to be always managing their own business. And it's just something that there's an expectation of, I think, at the management level that isn't necessarily real on the sales level because we probably don't have either the resources to onboard people effectively or the resources to properly enable people as they are maintaining their role, right? So we just say, here's the product,
Yeah.
here's a list, go at it, and then the first one and the last two kind of come into effect, right? We can't meet our sales goals. I'm stressed about it, so I'm going to leave and go somewhere else, and that's typically what happens.
Well, and
Yeah.
it's so interesting, and I'll flip over to kind of the next realm of data that I wanted to show as well, because I think this really reinforces, Dave, what you're talking about from the tech stack standpoint of, and Leah was just wrote in on chat that she's a solo realtor in Florida, overwhelmed with tech and how to keep up with ways to connect and stay connected with clients, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's interesting when you're looking at technology because you're always pitched. I mean, I've sat in this from a BombBomb perspective. We go meet with these companies and they're like, look at how amazing this is going to make your life. And then all of a sudden we're like, cool, we're in, we'll take it. And then you go, oh my gosh, the amount of work it's going to take for us to get to that level where it's going to be helpful is feels like it's going to take months. And that feels disheartening and can feel overwhelming. And Leah, for somebody like you that's a solopreneur, you're wearing a million hats as it is. You don't have time to sit down and focus on your tech stack for a month and a half straight and do nothing else, right? So I think this data is really interesting because, 13 is the average number of software tools. Um, Leo goes, don't look at real estate. Yeah, I think it's interesting. We all can have a lot more than that, but that's just kind of the average things that we give a sales team. So take out any of the marketing, take out any of those pieces. This is what a sales team sits with. The problem is 80% of those are underutilized. We're spending a ton of money that is not being utilized appropriately. And this is what companies are directly reporting to us, right? I've paid this much. I'm not using these tools. 76% of companies say the poor adoption of tools is a top reason that they think their reps are missing quotas. And I love and hate that stat at the same time. And Dave, I see you smiling already because I think it goes to what you just said of underutilization is one thing, but under training, under preparing teams to be able to use tools, I think from a data perspective, under prepping the tool itself so it's actually usable is a whole other realm of that that's really easy when you're a leader or somebody to go, oh yeah, they weren't using it the right way. And it's easy to put the onus on somebody else. And I think this is part of this reality versus reasonable element is going, are we actually setting these up to really provide what we need them to do? Dave, tell me what you were kind of smiling about because I saw that definitely triggered something for you.
Well, coming from the CRM space, Kevin, I have seen in so many cases that we have an expectation of our sales teams to utilize the CRM properly, enter in the
Mhm.
notes properly, make sure you're logging all of your phone calls, making sure that you're creating email templates, all of those sorts of things, which I think are important. However, the person who is giving me this instruction on what I should be doing in the CRM has no idea whatsoever about what they're asking or have the ability to illustrate or coach the sales teams on.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of expectation that's placed on the sales teams, but there isn't a lot of leadership or enablement which allow the sales teams to properly understand. So when we look at platforms like BombBomb, like any CRM platform, HubSpot, whatever the case, we start to, I really, really encourage somebody in the organization to become the product expert. And that way we've got an internal resource that understands what the expectation is for the sales teams, but also be able to coach effectively on it and not just say, watch a video, um, but to really understand the importance. And it's not just how to do it, but why it's important to us within an
Yes.
organization,
Which
right?
is so huge. And Leah, that's probably some of the questions you're asking, right? Is going, I'm throwing a million things, a million different softwares I can use, I should use, right? Because everybody thinks this is the only way to do it. We know in real estate, there's a million ways to do it effectively. It's a matter of what works for you and really understanding why is that helpful. And Dave, you're talking about that from a leadership perspective of not just saying, here's your tool, go use it, but how is this going to help you? What is this going to do for you? Why is this going to make your job easier, right?
And making sure as a sales leader that I've got the ability to coach my team, realistically coach, not be the expert in tech, because that sales leaders, typically you were a sales agent prior to becoming a sales leader.
Mm.
Um, Most of the time you couldn't hit your quota, so you marked out, so you went up to sales
You go to
management.
management.
I'm
Yeah.
totally kidding. But that being said, just having the ability when you're in your sales meetings to talk about your technology and not just talk about we're short on our quotas, but talk about the technology and potentially how it's affecting and what impact it has. Talk about some great stories we've had for some successes with our technologies, and I see that. And yes, I know we're on a BombBomb webinar, but I see that with BombBomb so often of what the engagement is with people who use the BombBomb platform effectively and telling these stories while we're in our sales meetings. So people, as a salesperson, I kind of live on an island in many cases. I'm isolated,
Mm,
but if I can hear stories and success stories for the most part by my colleagues, it typically will encourage me to, adopt,
sure.
self-adopt, self-learn, but at least I understand why these platforms are so critical. Some of them are so critical. Some I still question, but a lot of them are very critical within our overall business.
Absolutely. And I think even from a high level too, I know one of a complaint I have had occasionally on past leaders is people that come in and don't learn our product, let alone the additional technology things,
That's
right? If
exactly what I'm saying,
if I'm
Kevin.
working at BombBomb and not getting videos from a specific leader that has happened in the past, like that alarms me to a degree. I go like, hey, I really want you to dive in and understand it. Otherwise, how do we expect our teams to do it, right? And that's a little bit more of a leader to team perspective, but for those of you that are out there doing it, going, how do we expect our clients to understand something if we don't immerse ourselves and fully understand? And that's the experience that we need to bring, to them as well. And I think it's really interesting, just kind of going back to the expectations here, the is this reasonable, is this not? I was looking at modern sales reps and just looking like, what are we expecting them to do? We're expecting them to be prospectors, content creators, social media marketers, personalized outreach specialists, relationship builders, CRM data managers, none of which are actually selling products, right? So we hire you for a sales role and then go, oh, do all of this. And those of you that are running your own business probably go, yeah, I have to do all that too, right? Yes, you do, because you're the only one there to do it. But this load to me, looking at this list, goes, here's our break. Here's our break of the expectation of what we need them to do to hit their quota and the reality of what we're really asking them to do. It's a lot. They don't seem to match up to me.
And a lot of these also, Kevin, you can hit every one of your activity metrics. You can be all of these and still miss your quota as well, right? And a lot
Sure.
of times we focus so heavily on what I'm being asked to do that I sometimes lose what got me in this role in the first place, which is
Yeah.
actually going out, meeting people, being effective in my communication, making sure that every experience is exceptional with every customer that I engage with. All of those kind of things I kind of lose because there's so much being placed on me to make sure that I've got all my KPIs in place and I've got all of my metrics done. I've updated my CRM, all these things. I can still miss my quota. And in many cases, because I'm tasked with other elements that take me away from the sales floor.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you've really touched on is going to lead us right into this. Let's start naming some problems and putting some solutions in place of what we think. Now, am I going to sit here and say that what Dave and I say is the only solution to fixing some of these things? No, right? We're trying to bring up these ideas to provoke you and looking at your business in the realms of these elements, because I want you to be really intentional and start thinking about, what do I think the solution is for this? Now, the first one, and Dave, you couldn't have teed me up better if you tried. The first one that I think is worth really talking about is this idea of metrics. And no matter what business you're in, we've got metrics, we've got KPIs, right? I also hate when I go to webinars and they start throwing acronyms around and I have no idea what they're talking about. So,
That was on me. Key performance indicator. That
oh,
was
had,
on
had you already
Kevin.
said
I
that? I
I
hadn't even heard it.
I
Yeah.
was the acronym guy there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I didn't even hear you say it earlier. I heard the metrics part. So, yeah, key performance indicators, right? It's basically like, what are we looking at to show that what you're doing is effective? It's working in the right way. And what
Yep.
are we going to measure you by and as your job performance, right?
And Kevin, what I always see, and this is something I see, that high activity does not necessarily mean high performance. I'll say
Hmm.
that. And if
A
we are
lot of
just
times
being
it's,
if
sorry, I
if we
interrupted.
send 1,000 emails a day that say, "Hey, I'm just following up with you. Call me back if you want," that is a high activity, but it is not going to drive any results for us. So I
Well,
don't necessarily love high performance to expect high results. I like consistent and good communication. That is usually what the high performance is. So kind of
yeah.
take that. We've always had, you got to make 1,000 phone calls this month. Yeah, if I'm leaving 1,000 messages and just say, call me back if you get a chance, it doesn't provide any value to the person who you're making that phone call to.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you guys are going to hear us talk a lot about this concept in metrics, right? And so I wanted to put out, I'll show you kind of three different types of metrics that I see a lot of teams measure. I don't want you to think I'm saying any of these metrics are wrong. They are important for us to understand. But what I worry about is that they're not necessarily giving the full picture. To Dave's point of view, I think from my sales experience on sales teams, and I've seen a lot of times that the higher the amount of activities there are, usually that's somebody who's struggling to show that they're performing because they're not performing on the closings and on the quotas and on those things, right? I was guilty of that at times. When I was having a tough month, I was like, I'm going to show I'm doing a lot of stuff because my numbers don't look great. So the first one I want to look at is kind of outcome metrics, right? And these are like the what's happened. So these are important. What is our revenue? What is your quota attainment, your average deal size, your win rate, your sales cycle length? These are all sort of different ways to measure what are our outcomes. Once things have finished, how do we look back and look at kind of the success of that and if we're doing well? Really, I think the reason we go to these so effortlessly is because this is what leaders care about. They care about the bottom dollar. Are we hitting our numbers? Are we getting there quick enough? What's going on? We need to see that stuff. The problem you see there in the bottom is they tell you what happened and they don't really tell you why. They don't give you a lot of things to coach on and grow on. So there's a gap here, right? There's a gap in understanding that are these, yes, these are important for us to know and important for us to continue to evaluate, but they don't really give us the full story. Another one that I see a lot is pipeline metrics, right? Okay, what's coming? How many times have you sat and looked at your business and gone, okay, what do the next few months look like for me? Or how many times on a sales team, Dave, I'm sure you've written a million reports for your teams and your CRM systems trying to map out pipeline. What does it look like? What are we expecting? How do we measure these? What percentages do we put on stuff? I mean, the complexity of these is crazy. The problem with pipeline is you can start to make things look really healthy and really full with a bunch of bad fit deals with not great opportunities because you're trying to make it look like, oh, I've got a lot coming down the pipeline, right? I got a lot in the works.
The
So
other
there is stuff there.
the
Yeah,
other
expand
element
on
to
that,
this,
Dave.
Kevin, and I'll just kind of toss this out there, is that if we put too much emphasis on conversion metrics and those kinds of things for our sales teams, what ends up happening inevitably is our sales teams will start to sandbag deals and they won't put
Mm,
in the information that is really key to our business. So giving our salespeople the autonomy to manage their pipelines effectively, but don't put too much of an onus on kind of that pipeline, because if they're solely based on conversion metrics, like you're seeing here, lead to appointment, appointment to sale, those types of metrics, what you'll find is that they will not enter in anybody into our CRM, which is critical. That doesn't meet a specific criteria that's going to make them look bad, or
mm,
they're going to be held accountable for.
yeah,
So as we start to kind of look at our pipeline and really start to look at pipeline value or pipeline, and especially pipeline conversion, I really find the autonomy for our salespeople to be to have the confidence that they can enter somebody in without getting too hammered on when that deal is going to close, right?
sure.
And we really have no there's really no priority for any of these. What's most important on any of these, right?
Mm,
Is it
yeah,
velocity? Is it value? Is it, conversion ratio? What is most important, and have we defined those internally in terms of what our pipeline metrics should kind of represent?
yeah.
Do we, if we're selling homes, do we need 1,000 leads to get 100 appointments to sell 10 homes? Is that the metric that we use? And if so, it always starts right at the top of the pipeline. How much are we spending to generate
Hmm.
revenue, and understanding that we get about 3% of people that go to our website will actually convert into a lead, then how much website traffic do we need to convert? So all of these
Sure.
KPIs that we kind of start to manage, but at the sales level, I'm just trying to get deals in the door, right? And I'm trying to manage my own thing. So not having too much of an expectation for sales agents to be, the end all be all, doing everything perfectly, but kind of give them the autonomy and the confidence that their job is to sell, and everything else is going to kind of fall into place if they kind of understand the key principles of that within an organization.
Totally. And I think it's really interesting, Dave, and this is probably something I'm spoiling for further on because I know I've written this in some sort of spot on one of these slides as we get to it. But I think it's the concept of, are the tasks that we're asking people to do really going to give us the proper outcomes, right? And so it's like if we're saying you need to go do this, we need you to input the stuff, or we're only going to measure what's your closing rate. Well, then yeah, they're not going to put in all the ones that aren't going to close because they want their closing rate to look better. So are the metrics that we're looking at training the best behavior and training the right effort that we want? And you can see, I think activity metrics might be the peak of this for me. I see this with sales teams all the time of, you mentioned it today. I made 100 calls today. I sent 1,000 emails today. I did all of this stuff. The problem is they show effort and they don't necessarily show, was this effective? They don't really, you can see at the bottom there, more activities doesn't always equal better outcomes. In fact, a lot of times it could be the opposite potentially. If we're spending so much time trying to lean into, I got to show I'm doing a lot of things, I'm not spending as much time being intentional with the things I'm doing. I'm not really asking the questions, is this the right person to reach out to? I mean, Leah and I think it was Malik who mentioned, and he's in nonprofit. I think about these in all these different sectors. You know, Malik, you don't want to be calling hundreds and hundreds of donors who have donated $5 to your company. Is that helpful? Is that important? Absolutely. I'm not saying you forget about all of that. But if you've got 50 donors who have given you $1,000, well, that's a much more important thing. That activity could bear a lot more fruit for your company. Leah, to your point, you know, if I've got somebody who's potentially interested in 8 months at buying a $200,000 house, okay, great. I need to nurture that. I need to care about them because they are important and their needs and what they have is super important. I do care about them as people. But if I've got somebody who's ready to buy $1 million home right now, I don't want to go spend doing 1,000 activities on other people and other things. So again, just sort of kind of trying to bring it back a little bit to each individual industry and what you guys are understanding here. We've got to be careful not to ignore these metrics, but understanding that they don't necessarily give us the full picture and they're not necessarily training us in the best way. So, what is the solution to this? We've got to start measuring what counts. We got to start looking at things a little bit differently. So, I want to present a couple of these and then we'll do a little bit of a side by side to show you just a different way to think about this a little bit. So, one, looking at conversion metrics. Oops, I hit the wrong button there. So things like your call to meeting conversion rate. How many calls did I make per meetings that I scheduled? Okay. How many meetings did I host? So how many opportunities were presented from those? How many opportunities to closes? So what's interesting about this is we're not just saying what's your lead to close, because that's a big gap and there's a lot of things that go on in the middle of that. It's sort of taking each one of these chunks and looking at them individually. I also really like that one, the time selling versus admin time concept. I think that's a really interesting thing. We want to coach that the admin stuff, that the CRM stuff, that those are really important and pivotal. We need you to do that. However, what's the most beneficial? What did I hire you for? I hired you to go sell. Or where do I make the most money for me and my business? It's selling, it's talking to people, it's communicating with people. If I start looking at my ratio and I'm spending 60% of my day doing admin work and only 40% talking to people, maybe we need to start working on some stuff. And so I think this is really interesting because it starts to give us a little bit of a picture of, okay, what are some coachable things? Maybe my call to meeting conversion is killer. I'm really good on those calls. But when I get them on meetings, I'm not creating opportunities, I'm not closing deals. Now we've got some coachable metrics that we can start to focus on, or some things that we can challenge ourselves to start to work on and learn a little bit more intently. So I think it's really interesting. What do you think about those in comparison to some of the other ones we just said there, Dave?
Well, I think those are probably the key metrics that we love. And again, they're fluid. They're not going to be okay. You have to hit a 35 call to meeting conversion rate, right? Um, your final point on here, Kevin, is probably the key one that I want us to take away, that fewer activities, higher conversion. Fewer quality activities is better than higher activities without the quality associated. The other thing that is so available to us now is that we can see, and it doesn't matter what platforms we use in many cases, we can see how people engage with us when we have that outreach in place. So whether it's with an email or if it's sending out mass email, which we all do, or if it's how many people are actually watching our videos, and
Mm.
allowing our salespeople to understand the value of engagement. Okay, so if I'm sending out 100 emails, who's engaging with those emails, and breaking down that those are the key elements that I want to focus my energy on as a salespeople. Who is engaging with me? And there are so many tools in the marketplace now, mostly on the CRM side, but certainly in BombBomb as well, to be able for you to understand who is doing what with your outreach and spend your time focusing on those prospects, contacts, and let many cases, your CRM, kind of worry about the other ones, but
Yeah.
focus on the quality, right? And focus on the engagement that people have with you. I almost find it like a lot of mass email gets sent out and it's just kind of batch and blast, batch and blast. Let's just
Mhm.
hope for the best without necessarily tracking. Okay, I send out 100 emails. I had 50 people open it and 20 people actually downloaded a document. Focus on those 20 people. That's where I want to spend my time and not
Yeah.
just calling everybody that I sent the email to, you know?
Yeah, it's so interesting. We talk about this a lot from the engagement perspective as well, because
Yeah.
like you said, Dave, we can give you, video views, video plays, what percentage they watch, those type of things. So even in some systems that we have where we help build content and send for them, we have people all the time go like, well, I can't follow up with everybody I sent to. And it's like, no, you shouldn't. That's not where your time is best spent, right? You
Not
need
at
to
all.
take this engagement and look at the top. Find what is your deepest level of engagement, start there. It's way better for you to spend time with the 10 most intentional people than try to touch 100 people, right? Very, very loosely. So, and it's, man, you're just teeing us up left and right, Dave, to the next thing I always want to bring up. So I did pull up
But
that
I
second one.
apologize. I should wait until you bring that
No,
up. I
it's
think it's a nice
perfect.
segue. I think
Yeah, just effortless transitions for sure. So look at these things. The email reply rate, the speed to lead response, I think is a really important one. We know that's impactful when it comes to online leads. I mean, come on, in the real estate world, talk about that. If you're getting Zillow leads or you're getting leads from another source, we know that first few minutes is the most pivotal few minutes. So we've got to do that. So maybe that's something that's worth measuring because it shows us if we take longer, we're not converting as much. We're not getting as many meetings from that. But I think what's great, and you can see there, that bottom line really hones in exactly what Dave was talking about. Your rep's best time or your best time is working with the clients who are showing the most interest. That's where we want to focus. So to give you a little bit of a side by side of just how you can sort of rethink this, again, we're not saying don't measure pipeline. We're not saying don't measure our close rates and those things. Those are important. We've got to know if we're on pace to hit our quotas, if we've got the things to hit that. However, instead of just going like, how much do we have in pipeline? What's in what stage? Maybe we break it down. What percentage of deals do we have an identified pain with? Okay, maybe that's a measurable thing. What percentage of deals do we have multiple stakeholders engaged? We know that the bigger these deals get, the more you've got to have multiple people involved. So maybe those are some things that you could use to really determine the quality of your pipeline versus just what's in our pipeline and going, these are legitimate things. You can see communication there, right? Not how many emails did I send, how many calls did I make? It's what's my reply rate? What's my engagement? Dave just talked about that. So we get that. And then this idea of effort versus efficiency, I think is just a really, really important thing when we're talking about these metrics. We don't want to track things that are just how much did we do? It's the activities, it's those type of things. It's is our stuff working the right way? So instead of how many voicemails did we leave, how many activities did we log in our CRM? It's again, are we using how much time are we spending selling versus admin work? I like this one. How many meetings per 100 activities? What an interesting way to do that. Okay, cool. We need the activities. We know that those can bear fruit. However, I don't want you pounding 1,000 activities having 0 meetings on a day. That's not helpful for any of us. So if we start to measure these things and kind of find the balance between that, it helps us find a little bit of what that middle ground can look like to help train us and teach us to do the things that are more beneficial to the company as a whole. So again, we're not trying to replace traditional metrics. We're trying to rebalance them in a way. So I know we'll continue to probably talk metrics as we get to kind of the next pane here, but what I really want you to leave that section with is going, don't ignore those standard things, but how can we be more intentional and more curious to be looking at things that will actually teach us more, give us actionable things, give us coachable moments, help us learn more, and how can we measure things that are going to train us to be doing the right types of activities rather than just doing a lot of activities? Is there anything else you kind of want to hit on that before we jump to the next one there, Dave?
Well, I think, we ask our salespeople to be taking on a lot of different roles. We're expecting them to be
Yeah.
marketers. We're expecting them to be top of the pipeline experts, bottom of the pipeline experts. We're asking to be closing experts. We're also asking to be follow-up experts. So I think just giving our people, setting the correct expectations, understanding we can't be, everything to everyone, but just enable your teams with the best tools so they can understand who is engaging back with them. And in today's world of sales, everybody does not enter the sales funnel at the top and leave at the bottom. There are
Mhm.
many different locations that people come and go, and they engage with us in so many different ways. They engage on our website, they engage with our emails, they engage with our social. So for all of these different elements, understanding that those are key buying signals, and that's where I tend to focus my energy and attention on what those key buying signals are, and it's always engagement and just understanding how valuable that
Mm.
is in the amount of activities that I do compared to the amount of sales that I get back. I deal with the people who want to talk to me, right?
Yeah, I
That's
love that.
that's where I see the most value.
I think that's huge. Buying signals. What are the buying signals I know for my business? How do I lean in, track those things to understand, okay, here's where I lean in. And I look for these moments, these metrics, and go, that's a thing I need to lean in and follow up on. I think that's a great way to think about that. I love that.
Love it.
So let's jump over to kind of the next problem here. That's not just the metrics, but we've already teased this a little bit because it's inevitable. You've got to talk about this, is this idea of scale over personalization. Now, I'm going to lead into this one a little bit here. You can see I put a quote there. If KPIs assume unlimited time and energy, they're not metrics, they're just wishes, right? So these are things we've got to go. What is the reality that this can be done, or are expectations just wishes? We're just hoping for the best. But I'm going to start this. So get your fingers ready to throw into chat because I'd love to hear. I did ask this and tease this quote in January, but this to me is just this was like, oh, I get this problem now. How many cold emails do you think were sent every day last year in 2025? Every single day there was this number of emails. If you've got a guess, throw it in chat because I'm really curious. This to me was a good one. Dave, do you remember this quote? Do you know this stat at
It
all?
was more than 10, I remember, Kevin.
Yeah, a
Probably
little
more than
bit more.
100, more than 1,000, more than a million,
All
even.
right, we've got Leah at millions, we've got
Yeah.
David at thousands. Anybody have any
Yeah.
guesses? I'll give you some hints. It's more than both of those by a significant margin. So I guess there's only one way to go from millions, right? It's up to the B, right? 376 billion cold emails went out every single day in 2025. That number is so big, I can't even conceptualize it. Like, I don't even understand how big it is. But to me, I think this has sort of put a number to everything we are feeling. We're feeling that we all get a lot of emails. We all get a lot of junk that we don't want and we're not asking for. And the problem is, from a user perspective, we want all the systems to close all that out and hide all that stuff so it doesn't get to us. From a seller perspective, it's really frustrating and hard to overcome because we need to get our emails in front of people because we want to be intentional about it. However, this sort of spray and pray mentality, this I'm going to load 1,000 people into a group and blast one email out and hope for the best, that sort of mentality is what we've kind of leaned into to try and fix the fact that the traditional sales funnel is not giving us the same math it used to. And it's just adding to this problem. In my opinion, this problem is getting worse right now. And it's causing Google and Yahoo and Microsoft and all the big email providers to go, shoot, we've got to build better systems to block more things, which is making the problem harder, right? We're just kind of building this email problem. So, how do we do this? How do we understand that if you're on a sales team, you're measured by some activities, that we have to do things. We have to get in touch with people, whether it's cold outreach or whether it's people that are in our pipeline. We have to do these things, but we also want to lean into the beneficial ones. How do we balance that scale versus personalization thing? Well, you're going to laugh a little bit at the solution here, but I'll throw it out there because it feels like it's oversimplified. But we're going to show you how video can be helpful in this. And we got to bring our people back into the scale, right? At that scaling opportunity. Am I going to sit here and say you should never set up automated emails? Absolutely not. Dave is a CRM expert. One of the beauties of a CRM is that you can have triggers, you can have campaigns, you can have these things that run for you. That's how we scale our business. However, we cannot forget the personalization, the human in those pieces of communication. And I'll show you just a quick example here. And then Dave, I really want to hear your perspective from a technology side on what you think about this. But I pulled up kind of this email. This is a client that we've worked with. He's a car salesman, and this is an example of what his emails were sending out, right? So he's got his banner, he's got his picture there. The hard thing is, other than the picture, we really have no idea who he is. We don't know who this person is. There's none of the empathy, there's none of the tone. It doesn't feel like there's a real human. This feels like an email that went to a lot of different people. And that's what people can taste. They can smell it the second the email comes in. Half the time they can smell it in the subject line before they even open the email, right? So this is part of the problem is we're training people not to open our content rather than what if we put the human in that piece of communication? And that's what BombBomb brings to the equation, right? That's what video can help with is now we opened it and now we actually see a person in there. That right away feels more personalized. Now, the beauty of this, and what we're going to talk about a little bit more, is this idea. Well, you know what? Let me actually play you this video, and I want you to watch it and see if you notice something, anything specific. Tell me what you notice as you're watching this video. This is actually, again, we're comparing to this text email. Watch this video and how it would feel different if you got it.
Thank you for inquiring about our new or used vehicles, or if you just have a general question about vehicles, I'm more than happy to help you out. Feel free to give me a text, phone call, or email me directly. I'll respond in kind. Looking forward to working with you and your new venture of looking for a vehicle. Thank you.
Okay, so throw in chat. I would love to know what stood out to you. What did you notice as you were watching that video? Oh, I think my sound probably already also kind of stunk on that too.
No, he was good.
But
Yeah.
you heard it enough to get the gist.
Yeah.
David already put in, this is a real person. Totally. That's a huge thing to notice right away. Dave, anything stand out to you kind of watching that
Yeah,
video?
this is authentic. This is non-scripted. This is This is exactly what I want to see. Now, I noticed there was no filtering. He kind of had his camera on, on portrait and on landscape and all those things that I always recommend as we're coaching our sales teams. But what really came across first is that this was an authentic message, and it's very warm and welcoming. I can see his face. I can see his facial expressions. Now, I will say, Kevin, one quick thing prior to sending out the video, in the email that he sent you, the fact that he put his photo in there is a 10 time better opportunity for engagement than if it was just a plain text email. So the fact he put his photo in that first email, good. But this engagement video, you can see everything. And in many cases, and I don't tell this out there too much, I don't care what the content of this video is. I mean, I want it to be professional. I want it to be, engaging and authentic. But all I want to do when I'm sending this is I want to see how people react to it, because the people that react to it are the ones who I want to follow up with. So all of these tools that we have in place here are just mechanisms for us to understand engagement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
People who engage are the ones that are not necessarily qualified, right? We might not have qualified them totally. But that being said, it sure gives us an opportunity for a much more, real live situation rather than just kind of that batch and blast type of email where we shoot off a bunch of messages and hope for the best.
Yeah.
This is awesome, and I love the authenticity behind it.
Well, and I think what's beautiful is, like I'm looking at some of the chats, right? This is a real person, short and brief. Totally, right? He's being respectful that this person probably has never met him before. I'm going to keep it short to respect their time and understand I have to build the trust for a longer video. Little camera shake makes it look more real. Yeah, I love that little detail, Justin, right? Like, it's just authentic. There's nothing fancy about it. Leah put in real person who cares enough to make authentic video, not produced, and it could be sent to any contract. She is hitting on exactly what I was interested if somebody would pick up on. It's not personalized to any individual recipient.
No.
This is the beauty of how we can scale, is that you don't even necessarily notice or pick up on the fact that he doesn't say, "Hey, Kevin, it's Jeff here." He just says, "Hey, it's Jeff, and I would love to talk about X, Y, and Z and see how I can help you out." This is the idea. So we call this here at BombBomb an evergreen video, is just the term that we use for it. You can call it whatever you want, but it's the idea of I have a video that works very situationally, and it's not personal, like only works between Dave and I. It can work for lots of people that are in this specific situation. This is a beautiful strategy to start bringing the human back into that scale. So you can still have an auto respond that goes out of your CRM to a new lead that comes to your website with a video in it that gives you those opportunities. And this is where I think we can start to bring in and start to bring some of that reality and some of what's being reasonable together, in the sense that we can literally go, okay, we want to keep the human in, we want to do the impactful touches, but we also need help. We need a system that helps with that. So I'm going to bring up kind of a list, and I've got a couple of these evergreen examples that I want to show you all, because I think if we're talking something you can impactfully do right now, this is a great thing that you can start to look into. You can see I've got a list there. A new lead intro. We just showed you kind of that example from Jeff. Frequently asked questions are great opportunities. If you're looking for opportunities for evergreen videos, literally just go, oh my gosh, what are the questions I get asked every single week? Can I pre-record an answer to that question and just have it locked and loaded in my BombBomb account? Great. That will save you time. That will make you more efficient. and we can plug it in. Appointment confirmation or a team handoff. I'll actually play. This is an example I have right here to kind of show you. And then I'm really curious, Dave, too, after I show these next two examples, I'd love to hear if there's other ones that you have recommended or talked with your CRMs. But watch this as an example again. This is a step in the process. It's how do I get you to the next step? I'm confirming our appointment. So I'm going to help my appointment show rates. It's also interesting because this is a team. She's not going to be the one at the appointment. So she's handing it off to her rep in a way that can be used time and time
Thank you
again.
for scheduling an appointment. I'm Tina. I'm part of your internet sales team here with Lennar, and we are so excited that you are scheduled to meet with one of our on-site consultants. Please note that we have shared everything that we discussed with the consultant that you are meeting with, so you can have peace of mind knowing that your consultant will be focused on you and on the homes that are of interest to you. Your consultant is an expert in the community and will take great care of you.
So this one's a little different because you can tell she's probably written a script to help her, right? Get through that the right way. She also uses the term your consultant. Why? Because unfortunately, when you're scheduling appointments for model homes, it could be multiple people. So she can't say Jeff will be meeting with you. So that's the way that she sort of evaluated this. As we've worked with home builders, Dave, I know you work with home builders a lot. This has made massive differences in people actually showing up to the homes and showing up for appointments because they see humans. They're seeing, oh, I'm going to get the next. And then what's interesting is they'll follow it up with a video from the person that should be there for that appointment. So again, we're getting to kind of know the whole group there. I want to show one other example, and then Dave, would love for you to just chime in on whatever's resonating with you in this.
Oh,
Because
can
I
you
know
see me
this is,
chomping at the bit here just to
I know.
2 cents, Kevin?
I know you're so excited. And I just got to keep that anticipation building. So I think this is a really interesting one. This is actually somebody I used to work with here at BombBomb. And we had a cycle, right? As soon as you get to a certain point, you don't want to keep bothering people and saying, hey, do you want to buy? Do you want to buy? Do you want to buy? So it's this idea of one, it could be reconnecting and re-energizing a deal that you haven't heard from this person. Or it's also a win for all of us to kind of clean out that pipeline and go, where are we actually at? I don't want to keep bothering somebody that's not interested. So let's be real and let's be honest about that. So again, it's a situational moment that doesn't have to directly be personalized every time. So watch this as another
Hey
example.
there, Jamie here at BombBomb, and I just have a quick question for you. Just wanted to see if you're still interested in what we have to offer here. We've been reaching out to you for a little while here, and I wanted to make sure that I'm not becoming a nuisance, just because I thought that maybe you would be interested in what we have to offer. So if things have changed, that's perfectly fine. Just let me know. If we don't want to be reaching out to somebody who might be thinking of us as, man, they just don't quit. So, but if it is in the cards at all for you, if you have any questions at all, I'm not expecting a commitment by any means, but let me know how I can be helpful. Hope to hear from you soon. Thanks.
So what's kind of funny about that example is I was literally sitting to his right. I worked right next to Jamie, and I cannot tell you how many times that video re-engaged people. Either one, it helped him because they were like, "Oh yeah, thanks for reaching out. I'm not interested." Cool. Now I'm done. I'm not spending my time on the stuff that doesn't need to be spent on. Or, "Oh, Jamie, I'm so sorry. I just lost track of time. I would love to chat with you." It's a win-win in either way. We want the, yeah, let's re-engage and let's buy the product, but either way, now we can refocus on the new people that are engaged. All right, Dave, I'm going to let you loose
Oh,
with some of these ideas. But what are your
so
thoughts?
well, my thoughts are number one, authenticity is awesome, right? And I think that really shows that this is a real person. However, there is an expectation that there is going to be some thought put into what I'm saying to you. So
Sure.
when I'm doing my videos, I will ask ChatGPT to write a quick script for me that is less than 30 seconds on the frequently asked questions that I get. It will produce a script for me. I've got my iPad sitting right next to my camera, and that script is essentially scrolling. So all I'm really doing is I'm reading my script, but I'm giving my personality. And I can't just read my script like this, like I'm reading a book. It has to, and that first video that you showed, Kevin, from the online sales concierge when she was doing the lead pass off, that's such a prime example. She practiced. I could tell that right away. And that's still what we have to do. This doesn't have to be highly produced, overproduced, but there's still an expectation that it's not painful to watch because you're expecting me to sit there for 30 seconds and engage with this non-person who is essentially still in place.
Yeah.
So I always have a script ready for me. So I'm not having to redo it and redo it. If I forget something to say, I've got it right there at my fingertips. Super easy. Just go into any Claude or ChatGPT and just type up, write me a 30-second script. That's the key one. right? Just tell it how much time you want it to put in, okay? And it will produce based on your current speech cadence. And then just do a little bit of practice. And don't worry about how you look or don't worry about how you sound. That's what creates the authenticity behind it. But you've got 7 evergreen videos here that we can produce and just insert them into the body of our messaging. And don't have a bunch of text surrounding this email. Just hope you have a chance to watch this email, click on the play, and that will essentially create the engagement. And people love them. And I'm not going to throw stats out to you because I see a lot of engagement stats, and it's the one thing. And Kevin at BombBomb doesn't get to see this, but as we're sending out these types of communications, especially in a mass email, like if it's an auto reply or something like that, usually the click rate on a mass email, when somebody gets your email and they actually take the time to open it and click it, it's usually in the 3 to 5% range. At 5%, it's high. With a BombBomb email, if people will click on the email, it's upwards of 30%. So you're getting 6 times higher engagement just by including your video. And again, there's an expectation when I click on that video that you'll provide me with a little bit of value. And before I said I don't care what's in the video, yes, I care. I think it needs to be scripted, and I think there needs just to be a little bit of practice.
Yeah.
However, it is such an incredible tool for that personal without having to create a single email or a single video every single time. So having these 7 here, have 5 of these, right? Just in place, have them scripted. It'll take you 30 seconds each to record them. Then they're in your reservoir of emails that you can start to engage people with. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really is. I think we can overcomplicate it a lot and make it sound big. I love what you said, Dave, I always tell people that every video you send is training people whether they're going to watch the next video you send them, right? So you do want to be intentional and make sure what's the value for them. That's the human-centered component of this for me, is really thinking through, if I send something, why does the recipient need to see this? Not why do I need to send it? Why do they need to see this? What is the value for them? Really good question for us to constantly ask ourselves. I did want to throw this in there as well, because we've talked about the CRM and how you can plug these into automated responses. We also have labels at BombBomb. In your BombBomb workspace or in your video library, depending on if you're with our classic account or with our Engage account, you can go in and literally create labels. Engage, actually, now we have AI labels that will recommend them based on the transcript of your videos. So we have some things in our newer platform that help with that. But really why this is impactful is organization. Is going, if these are not automated, if it's a frequently asked question, so it's more of a trigger memory, I get asked this question, I need to respond with this. Well, I need to be able to find it quickly. And when you get lots of videos, that can be hard to do. So creating labels for yourself where you can come in and find these is a great, great, great process worth your time. Speaking of which, the last kind of problem solution we wanted to pan out here is this idea of time reality, right? Are we really leaning in and giving people expectations that are achievable, or is this something that's just, there's no way, there's just not enough time in the day? Some of the things I've heard from sales teams a lot is like, oh, we want you to personalize. Every message needs to be fully custom and personalized. Also, you need to send 50 plus emails every day. Okay, right there. I mean, even if we're only doing what? We spend 2 minutes per video. If we're doing a personalized video in every single one of those emails, you can see that's already multiple hours of our day just right there, you know? So is this achievable or is it not? We want you to build your brand. We want you to be out there on social media, making sure that you're, following stakeholders, you're communicating them with, you're commenting on the stuff that they comment on. But we're not going to train you how to do that. We just want you to do it. So go do it, right? And then the idea of tools. And we've talked about tools a lot, but this idea of you need to log in, understand, you need to use all the tools we're providing you, but we're not going to really build the system out well. We're not going to be in it as much as we want to. And also you need to be talking to clients a lot, right? So it's kind of this juxtaposition of what it feels like is being told and what it feels like is being expected versus what's reality. So instead, the process is the solution for this. We need to make sure that we're thorough on this. I sort of mapped out some ideas here, and I'll make this a little bit larger so you all can read through it, because I know sometimes it gets a little blurry on the feed. But what doesn't work is this idea of the old funnel, tons of tools, tons of emails, lots of meetings, building your brand, closing deals, monitoring pipeline. I mean, you can see this list I came up with in probably a minute and a half. So these are not far-fetched things that salespeople are expected to do, or that you maybe even expect of yourself, depending on what your role is. What can work is when we are thoughtful about our metrics, when we don't measure the effort, but the efficiency of those, right? All these things that we were talking about. We narrow down to the right tools, not just adding lots of tools. What are the tools that we need? And then we build those tools out for success, right? We train on behaviors, we build content, we provide deal support, all of these different elements. These are things that are starting to build processes that are going to be really impactful and not only help your team, but help yourself be efficient in that. So I did start and go like, okay, so where do we start with a process? Because it can feel overwhelming. And so I just wanted to give kind of 5 steps, 5 things to start to look at so that you can start to build a realistic, reasonable process for yourself or for your team that can work. Some things to think through. So 1, narrowing your tools. We talked about that. I am not saying go delete and cancel all of your accounts. That is not the message I'm saying. What I'm saying is I want you to look at your tools and go, 1, what are the tools that I need that are building the right activities for me and supporting the right activities? And 2, what are the ones that are representing me in the way that I want to be, which is more human, which is more connected, which is more thoughtful? What are those tools? There's no right or wrong to that. Dave, you mentioned Cloud, you mentioned ChatGPT. I use those on a daily basis. It could be really easy to go, AI is not human. I hear that, and we could argue about that all day long. However, I use it to help me with activities that are not my most human activities so that I can be more human in the moments that matter, right? So think about that. Be intentional with that. Redefine your metrics. We've talked enough about that. I don't need to beat that to the curb. Train, be curious. Train yourself. Find courses. There are so many online courses. There are so many videos. There are so many blogs, webinars, things you can find to train yourself in your gaps. Be curious about your own gaps. Look at where your team is struggling based on the new metrics and train to those. Be effective in those. And then content, right? I just talked about how I'm using LLMs all the time to help me build content and things. But make sure that you're using tools to help you build that, because I think it's really beneficial. Dave, you were talking about a script for a video. If you're going, shoot, I need to answer this, but I don't know how to position it, hop into Cloud, spend 5 minutes, and it will help you build a really nice set of bullet points or a really nice script that you feel confident in that you can reference to record that video and represent yourself the way that you need to. And then last but not least, I think just looking back at that metric, that alarming 43% number that I can't get out of my head of salespeople that are struggling with mental health because of financial stress and quota pressure. Check in with yourself, check in with your team, be curious about that. How are we really doing? The amount of salespeople that I learned that go, oh, I just got to lean in, I just got to work a little harder, I got to do a little bit more, and then they burn out. That is never going to get you to a sustainable long-term career. We have to start to build the systems and processes now that are achievable and are realistic. And if we're not intentional and we don't take the time to really think about that, we're never going to be able to build something that's self-sustaining and long-term. So, Dave, would you add anything to that if you're thinking about kind of building processes out, especially from your tech background?
Well, just to kind of reiterate, Kevin, fewer tools, better usage, right? If we have better metrics, we're going to have better behaviors. Realistic metrics, better behaviors. Training, confidence. Training equates to confidence. And I always say this, right? If we have success in one element of our business, let's share it internally. And I always see this in sales meetings, that if we can have one instance where somebody did something that was just really cool, and to be able to share it within the organization, people will typically, they'll roll their eyes at training, or they'll roll their eyes at role playing in a situation like this. However, if they see that somebody's having success with what they're doing, they will typically adopt it really easily.
Yeah.
So, having content equals consistency in your communication, and having that content in many cases pre-created. So it just really allows you the benefit of not having to, worry about all these different elements. You've got these things in your criteria. And then health is the key one. It equals sustainability for us, right? As sales agents. And it's not, burnout is not a people problem in many cases. Burnout is a system issue. And I've got too many things that I'm being asked to do without having clear kind of context in where the key components of my day are spent. So I probably was all over the map on that, but it's so absolutely critical that we utilize the tools that have the best value for us. And the rest of the stuff is kind of minutia.
Yeah. I love that. So let's narrow it down here. We're right almost at our hour. So to finish off strong here, here's some things I want you to walk away with. One, measure the activities that drive the right actions, not just action, right? Look at and focus on what are the things that those buyer signals that you were talking about, Dave. What are the things that show me those so I don't miss those opportunities? We have to maintain the human, especially when building at scale. So keep that in mind. Use the systems, use CRMs, use automation. How do I keep the human in that? How do I keep myself and my team in those? Build a process around you and your team rather than make your team fit into a specific process. I think that's why so often, half the sales teams don't make it. Half the salespeople don't hit quota is because we have one system that we expect everybody to fit into. Well, guess what? We've got 100 people on this webinar. We're all going to function very differently and have different strengths and bring different things to it. So think about that. Think about what are my strengths and how do I lean into those? And then last but not least, adapt. Be curious, adapt, ask those kind of questions. So for those of you that enjoy this, I did put the link into Zoom and I'll share this in chat as well. We are hosting again next month. We've got a great webinar for sales enablement. We're going to be talking about that. Dave kind of teased that a little bit earlier, but how do we not only train internally at scale? How do we build this to where it feels human, but it's scalable? And also, how do we do this with our clients? How do we make sure that our clients have the knowledge and the information that they need? So with that, I did also upload a one pager into this. So if you want to download that out of Zoom, don't worry if you've missed anything. Don't worry if we jumped over something really quickly here or you missed any of it. We will send a follow-up with the recording, with the resources, with the slides. We'll send you all of those elements. Unfortunately, you won't be able to play the videos in the slides, but you'll get to read all the content. So just know that that will be shared with you guys as well. So if you've got any questions, it's been a little bit of a quieter chat today, so that's totally fine. But if you've got any questions, please send something into the chat here so that we can answer those. Lisa, I do see yours, and I do see that in the Q&A that you threw something in there. So I will take a look at that as soon as we're done with the webinar and see what we can do to kind of help you moving forward with that. But thank you for being here. We really, really appreciate you all. Hopefully this was something that gave you a few more ideas, gave you some more context to what's going on, gave you some added pieces of what you can use to be more beneficial with your business and with your world. We are so excited that you are here. We love having you as part of the BombBomb family, as part of our community. Dave, thank you for leaning in and always being amazing and giving us more knowledge, more expertise from an entirely different angle. We appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for
All
taking
right,
the time
everybody.
today
Have a
to
great
educate.
rest of your month. We'll see you next month, and we can't wait to talk to you soon. Have a good one.